Welcome back to the Brew Bot development log. Last time, we learned the basics of the Godot engine after ditching Unreal. I pretty much loved everything about this engine, but that doesn't mean I knew how to use it. So we ended up with a very out of control Brew Bot and a somewhat decent looking scene, and at the end, we finally got a good grasp on how the game should actually work. Which means now we can finally start building the gameplay, and that begins with some better character movement and a few basic platforming moves. So let's start with a 3D scene. The first thing I want to figure out is a basic character movement script and camera movement, camera that follows the character and that you can control. Even though, as I said, the action or the combat is gonna kind of take the lead, I think, on a lot of the gameplay, you can't do any of that if you can't move and if the camera doesn't work well. So that's gonna be the first thing I want to do. But before our character moves, he needs to be able to character first. So I made a basic Brew Bot placeholder out of some cylinders. The only detail he really needs right now is eyes. That way I can tell the direction he's facing. So what does it look like now? Yes, the mesh should turn to face the direction he's moving. I think that's why he was spinning before. So let's do look at. I started by trying to make Brew Bot face the direction he's moving, which didn't really work out last episode. But this time, I'm going to be putting this bit of script on the mesh or collider instead of the movement component, which should make him visually turn without doing SCP stuff. At first I was worried because he dropped right on his face just like last time, but he did recover and without starting a creepypasta. I pretty quickly realized that having him face his velocity was what caused the Gibby-like movement at the beginning. So after replacing velocity with the input direction variable, we get an error, because input direction is a vector 2 of the X and Y inputs on the joystick. What I need is the vector 3 called direction. And now that that's sorted out, we have a character that moves, and looks in the direction he's moving. Plus he doesn't fall on his face or face the sky when he jumps. This is working pretty nicely, aside from the 1,300 errors. 1,500 errors. I tried clearing them, but they kept magically reappearing in the output log. But if I do a deep dive investigation and actually read the error, it seems like it's trying to look at a direction when there's no input. So I made an if statement before the look at command to check if there even is any direction. Then I set up a script on the camera that should look at the player's current position. So I got rid of this global position thing, and that seemed to work. But you'll notice, while the camera does rotate to follow the player, it doesn't move to follow the player. For that, I had to do some research. I figured if I could get the distance between the player and camera, I could make a couple if statements that basically keep the camera within a certain range of the player. And yeah, that didn't really do the right thing. Luckily though, I realized that this number right here wasn't actually the right nope, that's not it. It's really unfortunate that 3D projects like this have to start with such unintuitive concepts like Euler angles and quaternions. It goes straight from a blank project to comprehending the fourth dimension. It feels less like logic and more like I'm reading Latin incantations hoping something just starts levitating. But after an hour or two, I had finally put this together. What in the tarnation? But with some modifications, it does sorta kinda work a little bit. But overall, this really doesn't bode well for my camera system. I think my best bet at this point is just to get something that works so I can move on to something a little easier and maybe come back to this camera later. Cause there's no way I'm putting up with my sucky camera system until then, so let's get something better to work with. Let's download this and see what it looks like. Oh, it was trying to do something. Does it know that the... What? Oh, it's live. Distance. So let's bring the distance down. Bring it higher. This is so cool. It's not wanting me to use the stick or the mouse. It's pretty good though. It is pretty good though. I mean, the crazy thing is I got close to the effect that's happening right now, but in a way that's like janky and broken that I would never be able to build what this script has in it with that. Okay, camera speed, follow target. Oh, parent. Oh my gosh, does that mean, look at that. It's like swarming around him. Look at that. Yeah, okay, no, heck no. Thank you to who made this plugin, because this is awesome. This is really cool. So let's actually, yeah, let's add these then. Now that we have those horizontal inputs bound, I can make the player direction relative to this new camera. That way, forward is always directly away from the camera. This immediately feels very nice, but I'd like to be able to tilt the camera up and down too, which should be a built-in function of this camera as well. So is there a up and down camera? Tilt, camera up, camera down, right there. And I can add those real quick. And see, I understand it enough to be adding these inputs and making things work, so I guess that's good. I wouldn't have been able to do this, you know, a week ago. So that's cool. So I'm at least at the point where I can use add-ons. So it's not like, the camera's not like orbiting. Oh wait, tilt up limit. Let's just do it like, oh crap. Whoa. It's actually kind of cool to be able to do that with the camera. If you just want that perspective, if you want to see the landscape, not much of a landscape right now, but I would want the camera to move up into the air when I look down and down towards the ground when I look up. Can I set that up? How about that? How about we try to modify this script and make that happen? Camera underscore camera dot position dot y. Let's just do something super simplistic that I'm not even thinking about, that it's just like vaguely in the direction of what I think maybe should happen, and then see what it does and then work from there. Okay, minus equals, agree, and then times 0.1, so I'll soften it. So I think it was backwards and I want to soften it. Dude, it's working. I'm gonna put a 0 in there. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so cool that that worked that quickly. It doesn't work with the mouse right now, with mouse input. The thing is, this is really a game you're supposed to play on controller. You don't really need the precision of a mouse, and so you just get all the downsides of a keyboard. And so yeah, you're not really supposed to play this on a keyboard, but I have to make it playable on a keyboard because some people are gonna want to play it on a keyboard because they don't have a control. Whoa, just did a kickflip. Because they don't have a controller, or they just, for some reason, are like sick and twisted and they prefer to use a keyboard or something. So this is definitely has mouse input worked into it one way or another. If I set follow target to mouse, I don't think that's what I should do. So my mouse is leaving the screen, and when it leaves the screen, it stops working. When the mouse mode is set to input mouse mode captured, what is that? So I looked around at how to make your mouse stop mousing and start controllering, and I found a great tutorial on YouTube that shows just how to set this up. Thank you, Learn ICT Now. Very helpful if it works. If it doesn't work, I know who to blame. So let's make a ready function. Okay, what did he do? Input.mouse mode captured. Cool. Let's see if that works. Yes. Oh, wait, how do I get my mouse back? Uh-oh. Very cool. All right, well, I guess I fixed that pretty quickly. So now that the camera is more than serviceable due to a very good add-on that I have modified, so, you know, I didn't just steal it. I made some changes to it. Let's see, where's my part? Right here. I did that. So yeah, you know, I've kind of made it my own, you know. So next, this is where we get to making some moves for our character, some platforming moves that we have. So these actually have changed a little bit, or they are subject to change. For example, it's mostly the abilities one. Someone mentioned that the square button should be the jab punch, since square is the normal punch, and it would just feel better if holding right trigger to do your super moves and then pressing punch did a super punch. Somebody also suggested for the healing to spin the right, not specifically the right stick, but my idea is basically you could hold right trigger, and while holding it you could spin the right stick because it would be cool that spinning a stick would spin the coffee grinder. It would feel kind of tactile. You could even add like a controller rumble to it, and that would be kind of cool. It would feel like you're grinding coffee. So the thing is, this right stick is the camera stick. So it would effectively lock your camera while you're healing. But the main issue actually with spinning the stick for healing, and the reason that I actually don't think I'll do that, I don't want people like wearing out the right stick on their controller. So I don't think I'll do that. But that being said, it is a good idea to use this stick to grind coffee. And I'm sure I'll find somewhere else to do that. So we have character movement and camera movement down. And then slow fall, that's something we can make. Dive is something we can make. And crouch is something we can make. Slow fall actually sounds ridiculously easy because I have gravity built right here. So all I would need to do is multiply. So this is gravity, get gravity times delta. I would just need to multiply it by one more number, which is like fall speed. And then I would just need an if statement or something like that that checks if slow fall, set fall speed 0.5. So then it would cut your gravity in half. And then else fall speed equals 1. So the tricky thing comes in not with just making that happen. As you add these different functionalities of your character, each one needs to interact with the next in the way that you think that it should. The next ability I want to make is crouch, which includes the crouch jump. So while you're holding it, if you jump extra high. If we want Brew Bot to be able to crouch though, he can't already be on the ground. So I brought him up in the air a little bit and gave him some feet to make this floating look more natural. Something else I should do is tie the movement speed to the game's engine time to make sure it's not tied to your frame rate. Otherwise you'd be moving faster at higher frame rates and slower at lower ones. So that's probably gonna slow my character down. Oh, a whole lot. 200, 200, 400. That's crazy because it used to be 5. Now it's 200. I think that's about where it was before. I also added a sprint button, which just increases your speed and also increases FOV, all of which was fun and simple enough to set up. But I've still got to make jumping not work while you're sprinting. So we need to actually go to jump, select. So and is on floor, and then we need one more. And so we don't have a variable for sprinting, but we do have walk speed and sprint speed. So we can actually just check if speed equals walk speed equals walk speed. Don't worry, because speed is not your character's actual velocity. Speed is your character's movement speed. Actually, that would be a much better name for it, because it's not your current speed, it's your speed of when you move the stick. So now I shouldn't be able to jump while running. Let's test it. I can jump, but I can't jump while running. And as soon as I stop running, I can jump. So that's what I wanted. Before I do the crouching, I'm going to do the slow fall because of how easy it sounds. Let's do another variable. And then we're gonna multiply this by fall speed. And that's not gonna do anything yet until we lower fall speed somewhere, which is going to be on holding sprint, not floor. So that means you are in the air. Fall speed equals 0.5. Else fall speed equals 1.0. So there's one more thing here. If you're running, so if you're holding it and you go off a ledge, you'll start slow falling, which I actually don't want. I want you to keep running so that you can like run off a ledge and keep your speed and not just start slow falling. I'd rather, if you want to start slow falling after running off a ledge, I think you should have to let go of sprint and then press it in the air. So I think you should have to press it while in the air. I think that's normal. Looks normal. And then yes, that slowed us down. But if I run off of something, I'll slow fall, which I do not want. With sprint working and crouch still kind of scary sounding, I tackled the slow fall ability, which shares the R1 button with sprint. The difference is, slow fall should happen if you're in the air when you press the R1 button, while sprinting should start and stay going if it's first held when on the ground. That way you can run off of a ledge and keep all of your speed without randomly slow falling. I know what this should look like in action, but I've got to reverse engineer that into a series of nested conditions to get in and out of those movement states. I ended up using the input statement to set a sprint boolean to true, and then outside of that, checking for that boolean every frame to then increase speed. Then I had a third if statement that checks for exit conditions and sets the boolean false. I don't know. Again, makes sense in my head, maybe doesn't. So I don't run on accident when I just walk. I do run when I hold run, and I stop running when I let go of run. What happens if I jump off an edge and then press sprint? I don't sprint, I slow fall. And when I land, I start sprinting. What happens if I sprint off an edge? Yes, I keep sprinting. This is... Yep, that's exactly how I wanted it. You can't sprint while running. Awesome, looks like it works. And yeah, I did just say that you can't sprint while running, but I swear I do actually know how this system I made works. But now we come across another issue that needs to be addressed. The point of slow fall could be to stick a landing. Let's say you want to land on this thing, you slow fall, you kind of, and then you land and you start rocketing around. So they're kind of two different, you have slow and fast that are kind of fighting against each other. So now I've got to make sure that when you land while holding slow fall, you don't start sprinting and would have to press the button again to do so. This was pretty similar to the sprint loop thing, setting variables to true or false under the right conditions, but I kind of broke the slow falling and had some trouble getting it back. It turned out to be an else statement triggering, so I got rid of that. It's because of this else, isn't it? I'm gonna blame it on the else. Yes. Wow, that's slow. Oh, and there's an issue. I can use it while I have vertical velocity and it will... Oh, and I still have slow fall enabled even though I let go. So let's just... And velocity dot y. So that'll make sure velocity is negative. Wait, it's not... Wait. Okay, the issue now is it's not setting slow fall to false anywhere. Slow falling equals false. And not is slow falling. Let's get rid of landing on the ground doing it. If I sprint off of something, I just sprint off of it. If I slow fall and then I land and I'm not sprinting, I have to let go and press it. That is exactly how I wanted that to work. This is so much better than Unreal Engine. Godot really has been a ton of fun to use so far. It's just more satisfying doing everything through the scripting rather than a plethora of disconnected interfaces. Now, before we do crouching, I want to give the sprinting a little bit of leeway on activating after a jump. Because right now, if you press sprint one frame before landing, it'll slow fall for a frame and then not sprint. So I made a raycast under the character, just like we had last episode, that gets the distance from the player to the ground. Then I can incorporate the floor distance into the sprinting if statement. And now, if you're so low to the ground that slow falling is useless anyways, you'll just sprint when you land. Now it's time to start setting up the crouch ability. Maybe ability is a strong word for just crouching, but this was actually the hardest thing to set up so far. Each new approach resulted in different weird stuff happening, but I could tell I was getting closer. At some point, I could no longer turn. And then I was doing this, which was actually good. Hold up. Yes. You believe it or not, yes, that's exactly what I want. Brew Bot default dot position on ready. Yeah, he starts in the right spot. Yes! The amount he crouches by is way too harsh, obviously. He's going through the floor. Let's go up on here. Yeah, I like that. Okay, and we can actually have it glide down in the same way that we made the FOV glide down. So the way we make it glide down is we just need another if statement. Where were it? Okay. I don't know if this is making me smarter or dumber. Right here. And robotmesh.position.y is less than, or I should say greater than, crouch position, then instead make it minus 0.05. So it'll take, what is that, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25? Okay, it's making me dumber. It should take 5 frames. This should say actually minus equals 0.05 if not crouched and is less than crouch position. I might have messed something up somewhere, but let's see what this looks like. How about that? Okay, hold on now. Minus 0.25. Now he freaking just still leaves. Oh, I need to do Brew Bot default, not his current position. Okay. Y? Yes. Actually, no, because that's okay. Wait, if it's less than Brew Bot, because you're trying to return to. Yeah. Look at that. So what it doesn't do is change my hitbox at all. So like if I'm trying to get like under something, it's not gonna help. Well, I'm sure I'll figure that part out some other time. Now I can very easily make the crouch jump by just having jump go extra high if you're crouching while you jump. Jump is normal. That's insane. Which means I can go in slow fall. So I think the next thing I want to add is, well, actually, I think I pretty much just got one thing left, which is the dive. I've got sprinting and slow fall, I've got crouching, I've got jumping, I've got crouch jumping. So that's gonna be probably pretty tricky. I think we can probably figure it out. Diving? Yeah, should be pretty easy. First, I'll set up an input for the B button on controller and middle click on mouse. Well, the button's bound. What's next? This is where things, this is where it gets tricky because this is where I have to make him dive. So we need our character to not rotate first, because you have to think about the order these things happen in. If he rotates, look at what happens to the corner. It goes into the floor and it would kind of push him up out of the floor. It would act screwy. So he needs to go up while rotating at a speed that's adequate to a certain angle, like continue going towards that angle until he kind of reaches it. And then as soon as we could even have a hitbox right here. I just don't want to get too overly complicated with this. So then when he hits the ground, he would snap parallel to whatever surface he hits and carry whatever velocity he had forward, but with less friction. And then there's so many stages to this. Once he's out of momentum, it should know to automatically pop him back up. Or you can press jump early to pop him back up. So, how do I decided to start by making the level here a little bit better for testing the dive. I figured the first thing I'd do is just try and add some Y position to get him up off the ground, and then add some rotation and see how it goes. Well, I guess that's what I wanted. I could not figure out for the life of me how to make my character do this dive without tripping over or stepping on top of other factors that are affecting the player's transform. Should the camera even be parented to the player? Should the movement component be rotating to dive, or just the mesh? If it's just the mesh, then how would his collider work according to that new position? If I rotate the collider, then that's really no better than just rotating the movement component. Several times I got worried that I just had my character nodes set up wrong. Like, maybe I'm going about this the wrong way outside of the coding, and so me trying to make this work is actually more like a workaround to accommodate my janky setup, because things were not going well. I was falling through the floor because I was turning 2D, and so I could no longer stand on a 3D surface. You know how bad you have to mess up diving that you change dimensions? This went on for about 8.5 hours. In a single day, I spent 8.5 hours trying to make my guy rotate, and then move forward, and then stand up. This footage is literally playing at 10,000% speed, and it's still too slow to show even half of the time I spent on this. And like 90% of it was testing things, and then undoing them, and then going back to things I had already tested and giving it another go. So it doesn't even make for very interesting footage. But I was making progress, and I did start to have some kind of dive. Slowly it did get better, and I was constantly adding additional features like sliding down slopes, because making the dive behave the right way kinda meant getting things like this working. It entailed way more interaction with the level than I had really anticipated, and like anything else so far, making the dive better meant temporarily making it not work at all until the new feature hopefully resulted in something good. And making Brew Bot face the floor while sliding was one of the harder parts of this whole process. I know what the floor normal is, and I know what my character's rotation is. I know everything I need to, but I don't know exactly how to orchestrate all of it into a working script. At this point, I was considering throwing in the towel this week. It's not even accurate though. Well, I don't think I'll be able to get this episode. I think this is something I'm going to have to hopefully get feedback on, but I mean, we got a lot of other stuff working. But in one last attempt to find something, I came across the perfect tutorial for this floor issue and ended up with this.
Yes, that worked. Well, let's continue. Apparently that's good. Yay!
And of course, this pretty much broke everything, but once I fix it, it should look pretty darn cool.
I'd want him to be on his face, so that's 4 radians then. Not quite. How many radians is 180 degrees? Oh, it's pi? Pi. Straight up. Yes, yeah! I just kind of turn into that when I'm done, but that's okay. I kind of like the RuneScape look it has right now. I kind of really like it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's hard to describe where I'm at with it right now. It has been frustrating, some of it, but I do feel like I have something that works better now. And I also, though, I feel like before I move forward with anything new, or even trying to iron things out that exist, I should really clean up this script. All right. And that's all I've got for episode 5. We went from spinning in circles to some halfway decent character movement, but this episode does have me slightly worried about how coding heavy these videos could become, since I generally prefer to show some of the more visual parts of the process, which I did basically none of this time. I think in future episodes, I'll try and be sure to get some visual things done too. That way things don't get too dry and numbery. Next episode, I want to get our 3 cylinders and 2 cubes replaced with an actual character model, with some animations too. That should be a good break from just pure coding. Well anyways, that's episode 5 of the Brew Bot development log. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.